So I guess I throw this out to you, Mr. Mills, or you, Ms. Harbert, in terms of inconsistent and duplicative regulations between state and federal jurisdictions and the impact that they then have on investment. I think you heard Senator Gardner mention it as related to the fracking in places like Colorado. But what can we be doing to, again, ensure that we've got good standards in place, because that's what we want, but an assurance that we don't have an overlap and a duplicative process that doesn't contribute to better value? Mr. Mills?
Well, Madam Chairman, that's a critical issue. In my work with small businesses and where in my capacity as an advisor to venture funds and doing a lot of venture capital, I interact with a lot of small businesses. And what I find is that those businesses are the ones who will tell you quickly that the single biggest problem they face in expanding their business is not taxation, it's not finding skilled employees, it's regulations. And in the oil and gas business and the shale business, it's populated by thousands of small and mid-sized enterprises. So the friction that's created is very real, it's very expensive, and it slows development. In fact, we have the evidence of how big an impact it is. There's a lot of shale on federal land. We know how much the shale oil and gas production has not increased on federal land and how much it has increased on state lands. And it's a very simple metric, not because the shale doesn't exist. It's because you're comparing, as my colleagues have pointed out, permits that take days and weeks to permits that take years. If you're a small business employing 20 people, you can't wait and pay for their salaries for a permit that takes a year. You will go where the permit takes 40 days. And no one in that business community is looking to avoid the permitting requirements. They just want them to be clear and expeditious.
Well, and I think this is where the great frustration is. It is not as if the states are not doing a good job. In fact, in many cases, an exemplary job of regulating. And somehow or other, we've gotten to the point where unless it's regulated by the feds, it's just not good. And I'm not quite sure how we got there, but I want to change that dynamic. I think the states have done good jobs, continue to do good jobs, and I think that we need to recognize that. And yet so many of our policies say, unless it's federal oversight on top of what the states are doing, we can't trust you. We got to get away from this lack of trust of what our states have been doing.